Ori has always been a game series I love and many adore. It's always had a space in my memory, never letting me forget about it ever since I learned about it. I remember reading about Ori and the Blind Forest in Game Informer and how much I was interested in this game. I later found out it would come to Switch and I was ecstatic. I read more about it online and discovered there was a second game, Ori and the Will of the Wisps. I immediately checked to see if it was coming to Switch, and sadly, the director said they had no plan of porting it over. A couple months later, I went down to Walmart to buy this game. I just couldn't get over it. I just could not get my mind off of it. And to my surprise, both games are right there next to each other for Nintendo Switch. Without hesitation, I bought both games, and the rest is history. While Ori isn't the most popular, it does have a very dedicated cult fan base. Not very many people know about these games, but the ones that do seem to love them to no end. Why do people love these games so much? Well, I think I have the answer. So come with me as we delve and uncover the magic of Ori. Before we reveal its magic, let me first get you acquainted with Ori. The game starts with the peace and serenity of Nibel, a forest full of beautiful scenery and vibrance. The harmony of the forest is broken by a heart-stopping roar of incredible thunder, and a storm breaks out. Heavy wind, rain, and lightning bombarding the forest breaks off a shining leaf of the spirit tree, the life breath of Nibel. Naru, a creature from Blackroot Burrows, watches as the leaf makes its ephemeral descent to the ground, where it bursts into a cloud of light and reveals a small light spirit named Ori. A weakened and exhausted Ori is taken into a loving embrace by Naru. Naru takes Ori in and raises them as her own child. Ori grows up collecting fruit from lush trees and building bridges over glistening creeks. As Ori makes it back to the cave with arms full of fruit, they hear a roaring in the distance while the spirit tree calls out its gleaming light. Ori stares in shock as Naru pulls Ori into the cave in fear of the tree's call. Later in the game, it is revealed that Kudo, an owl of massive size, stole the spirit tree's light, which caused a chain reaction of decay throughout all of Nibel. As the painstaking days slug along, Naru starts to grow weak. She then goes out to find fruit on a low tree high in the canopy. Out of reach, Naru returns to the cave to rest. Ori then wakes up to get the fruit from the tree through an opening at the bottom. Once back at the cave, Ori happily offers the fruit to Naru, but gets no response. Naru, unfortunately, passed away while Ori was out. Saddened and with no reason to stay, Ori sets out into the desolate forest. Weakened and unable to push on, Ori collapses at one of the roots of the spirit tree. With the last of its power, the spirit tree revives Ori, and thus the prologue ends and our hero's journey begins. Eventually, our little guardian spirit comes across Sign, who is later revealed to be the spirit tree's light stolen by Kudo. She tasks Ori with regaining the three elements that keep Nibel in balance: water, wind, and warmth. And once all three are gathered, regain them all into one being and restore the light of Nibel. And that's the story. That's all you need to get hooked. Now, you might be saying that every story is the same way, but that's not really the case. It's the smaller plot points that really transcends the love that people have for these games. For example, Gumo, the last of the Gumon tribe, who were all wiped out during the cataclysm of the forest, steals the water element key. However, later returns it to Ori when Ori saves him from a rock slide. In Ori's death, Gumo uses his clan's sacred treasure to revive Naru. This really makes you feel sympathy for Gumo. He used the last of everything he had to help out Ori. It almost makes you feel bad for Gumo. Now, perhaps the most heart-wrenching and tragic moment of the entire game is about Kudo. Is when Kudo is going on a rampage, trying to kill Ori, when she sees Naru protecting Ori. The reason Kudo stole the spirit tree's light is because when the tree was calling out to Ori, it let out brilliant gleams of light which burned Kudo's chicks to death. To prevent that from happening to her last unhatched chick, she stole the light and hid it away. She sees Naru protecting Ori, and she knows the pain of losing children, and can't happen to bear that upon anyone else. Can't happen to see that happening to anyone else. So in a race of desperation, Kudo takes Sign and returns her to the tree, and causing an explosion of light, incinerating her and sacrificing herself to save Nibel. This is just one of many reasons why many people have a connection with these games, is the emotions they make us feel. But before we get into that, Ori and the Will of the Wisps caps off the story and really illustrates the beauty and magic of Ori. The story of Will of the Wisps takes place immediately after the events of Blind Forest. Kudo's last egg hatches and a baby owl is born. Gumo, Naru, and Ori all raised and take care of this owl they collectively named Ku. All three spend their days raising Ku and playing with Ku, teaching her the ways of life. Ori and Ku spend a lot of time playing together and become the best of friends. They finally decide it's time to teach Ku to fly, but to everyone's sorrow, her wing is broken. Ori then remembers they still have the feather from Kudo. Ori rushes back to Ku to show her that her wing can still be fixed. Without hesitation, the duo hurry to Gumo, where he fixes Ku's broken wing. In a burst of excitement, Ku takes flight with Ori atop her back, and they fly through the beautiful and majestic landscape of Nibel. Eventually, they end up in the forest of Niwen. They take in the wondrous scenery of Niwen when suddenly a storm breaks out. Roaring winds detach the feather from Ku's wing and separating the two, sending them flying. Ori wakes up in the forest with Ku nowhere to be found, and thus kickstarting a brilliant hero's adventure through Niwen to find Ku. The plot is similar to the first, but here Ori meets Qualak, a giant toad overlooking and protecting Inkwater Marsh. He tells Ori that Ku is in the Silent Woods, a desolate and forgotten graveyard of owl carcasses. However, Niwen's waters have been contaminated due to the wheels of the wellspring no longer functioning. Ori eventually makes it to the Silent Woods, overjoyed to be reunited with Ku. Unbeknownst to both of them, though, Shriek, a deformed and vicious owl who was orphaned at birth and rejected by the rest of her kind because of how she looked, attacked Ori and ended up killing Ku. Ori makes it back to Qualak, where Qualak then gives Ori a wisp, the voice of the forest. Qualak then tasks Ori with finding the rest of the wisps that were scattered when the willow spirit tree passed. Ori must regain all of the wisps into one being and restore the light of Niwen. This sets our little hero's story in motion. Personally, I get more of an emotional response from Will of the Wisps. I feel it had a more tragic ending than The Blind Forest. The first game had a relatively happy ending, albeit Kudo sacrificing herself. She was ultimately satisfied with saving Nibel, knowing Ori, as well as Ku, would be safe. Will of the Wisps, however, didn't end so heartwarmingly. Around the middle of the game, Qualak becomes corrupted with a parasite. He attacks Ori and we must fight him off. Eventually, Qualak expels the parasite and after some time defeats it. However, it's too late for him. because he dies from his grievous wounds from the fight with Ori and the parasite. He spent the majority of the game up to this point working with Qualock and building connection with him, only to see him fighting for his life and failing right in front of us. All we can do is watch. We feel so helpless as there's nothing we can do. It's a tragic event that didn't have to happen. It could have been avoided. This game ends with Ori finally rejoining all of the Wisps into one, named Seer, the true light of the Willow Tree. The Willow Tree tells Ori that his time is up to hold the light, and that Ori must fuse with Seer and inherit the light. However, Ori has to make a life-altering decision and forget their previous life all the way up to this point, lose everything to inherit the light of the Spirit Tree. Ori ultimately joins with Seer and actually growing to become the new Spirit Tree of Niwen, reviving Ku in the process, and protecting Niwen. That's not sad, as you may think, until you hear the tragic backstory of Shriek. After her battle with Ori at the end of the game, she was badly wounded and flew back to the Silent Woods, where she died from her injuries under the petrified corpses of her parents. Shriek never had a heartwarming moment. She lived her entire life full of hate and resentment. She was rejected by her own kind because of how she looked. She's never had anyone there to show her any support or love. She's lived her whole life in isolation, wondering what was wrong with her and why no one wanted anything to do with her. This caused her hatred for the world and only gets stronger day after day. She gave it her all her strength and all of her might to take out Ori, the offspring of the thing she hated the most, and was still bested. This has to be the lowest point in her entire life. She was just beat by the very thing she hates the most? She goes back to the only place familiar to her, the Silent Woods, a deserted and forgotten graveyard of her own kind. She lays under the protection of her parents' dead bodies, where she slowly passes away and finally gets some well-deserved rest and peace. This really hits you in the heart. It makes you feel immense sympathy for Shriek. It makes you ask, why did this happen to her? What could have changed? She never deserved any of this. I can actually relate to her. I've actually been an outcast for a large part of my life as well. I know the pain she is feeling, and it is not a desirable feeling to have. No one should ever have to go through anything like that. And that's the thing about these games. They make you feel a myriad of emotions through its abstract storytelling. This is why abstract storytelling works so well. It lets you feel how you want to feel when you want to feel it. Humans don't like being told what to do. They aren't good with that. And abstract storytelling plays into that. With the story not telling you how to feel through dialogue, you can interpret the moments for ourselves and build a deeper connection. It evokes natural emotions that are not forced. This is what makes this type of storytelling so powerful. It makes the emotions you feel in story beats that much more genuine. What makes Ori such a special case is the way it invokes those emotions through its cinematic cutscenes and original orchestrated score as well. The soundtracks in these games are of nothing I've ever heard before. The plethora of instruments and sounds all blend together so perfectly, like the sounds of birdsong and cricket chirps in a forest. The music of both games were composed by Gareth Coker and performed by the 72-piece Philharmonia Orchestra and 20-piece Pinewood Voices. Ori's music does an incredible job of evoking indescribable emotions during the story scenes. There is never a moment when you won't feel some sort of way. For example, the moment when Kudo sacrifices herself to save Nibel. The remarkable cinematic and the music stirred up this emotion in me of not wanting to let go. I knew exactly what Kudo was doing, and I didn't want it to happen. I did not want to see her go. I grew attached to her through learning her backstory. I felt a sense of sadness and loss during Kudo's death. I ended up feeling the same way during Shriek's passing as well. Even during boss fights and escape sequences, the music is fully dynamic and goes all out, truly giving off a sense of desperation and willpower. You are desperately fighting to save the land from decay and corruption. accentuates how you feel and deepens the emotions, leaving these moments not so easily forgotten. Even when simply exploring, the score can make you stop and truly appreciate the melodic, harmonious sounds you are hearing. Each area has a fitting track that perfectly captures the environment. The score of these games is something that cannot be described with words, only felt with the heart. I want you to listen to this and tell me what you feel. listen to this. What did you feel? That's the thing. Everyone is going to have a different answer, and many of you won't be able to describe it. But that's okay. It's truly wonderful how the music makes you feel. Like you just heard, it's virtually the same song, but it makes you feel two different emotions based on how you listen to it. This is truly magical. But this isn't the only thing that makes up the Magic of Ori. Another is the exploration. The game often tells you where to go, but not necessarily how to get there. The map is blacked out until you find a map fragment that highlights the rest of the map and shows all of the paths. So most of the time, you don't even have a clear path of where to go. You truly have to explore to find the right way. There is no rush to push the story along. You can truly take your time and explore the massive areas of Nibel and Niwen. You will often come across an area you cannot access yet. But no area is inaccessible. You simply just need to find the ability that is needed to get there. Now, Ori contains its fair share of backtracking, but not the tedious fetch quests like in other games. This backtracking is going back to those seemingly impossible to reach areas once you get a new ability. That area then opens up into a whole new part of the world to explore that often leads to power-ups or more abilities. Nibel and Niwen are full of platforming puzzles and logic puzzles for you to solve, often rewarding with power-ups. No area or puzzle gets redundant. All the puzzles are engaging and fun to complete. The payoff is worth the struggle and never gets boring on the areas over and over again. Now, you've been seeing it this whole video, and perhaps the most lauded part of these games is the art style. The art style and environmental design of the Ori games are completely hyper-realistically hand-painted. It promotes a level of immersion that leaves you awestruck. Each area is carefully crafted to fit the environments designed for them. The amount of detail put into these environments is truly mystical. The background and even the foreground are fully animated and designed. No part is left untouched. All these areas are believable, like these could be real-life places. The art styles of these games are so realistic, you can't help but stare and just say, whoa. The way Ori interacts with the environments looks so natural and dynamic. The grass moving in the direction of Ori when stepped on, or wooden beams dipping down when Ori is standing on them. Not a lot of games use this art style, which just makes Ori that much more unique and special. Ori isn't just a pair of games that look pretty, they are experiences. Experiences that make us feel a special type of way that's just indescribable. These games aim to tell a story with a message through an unforgettable experience. There's a reason so many laud these games for what they do. The story of Ori makes them feel a way they've never felt before. It helps give insight on the deeper meanings of life. The message Ori and the Blind Forest is trying to convey is a deeply emotional story about love and sacrifice and the hope that exists in us all. Kudo loved her chicks so much that she risked the state of Nibel to protect them. She risked everything. Once she saw Naru and Ori, she saw the motherly love she once gave to her children and knew how much it would hurt Naru to see Ori gone. She had a sense of hope wash over her. The hope that she could save everyone and Nibel by sacrificing herself for a cause bigger than herself in her revenge. The message Ori in the Will of the Wisps is how rejection and the lack of love and support is unhealthy and can truly drive someone to do and commit some terrible, terrible acts. Shriek never had anyone there for her entire life. Over years, she was building up hatred and jealousy for the world until she could no longer take it and acted out on those emotions. I highly recommend you go out and play these games. They were experiences I've never thought would impact me so much. I've actually gained a deeper appreciation and clearer view of the message now that I've gone back and played these games again. I've never been able to forget the way these experiences made me feel. I could replay them over and over and over again and never get tired of it. I felt the exact same way the second time as I did on my initial playthrough. Don't be afraid to go and experience new things. Life is all about experiences, and you can only grow from those experiences. So hopefully, you've been moved like I have from the magic of Ori.